Meet the people who make Burning Man happen.
Around the world.
Dreamers and doers.
The artists, freaks, and fools.
Burning Man Live.
Hey everybody, this is Burning Man Live. I am Stuart Mangrum, and today we're going to talk a little bit about music. The myth is that there's no good music at Burning Man, or there's nothing but techno, or there's only two kinds of music at Burning Man, drums and bass, which is a little bit true. But if you believe that, you have not gotten out of your camp nearly enough, because if you get a chance to roam around Black Rock City, you're going to hear everything. You're going to hear Christmas music, heavy metal, hip-hop, bluegrass, alternative singer-songwriter, classic rock, dancehall, reggae, ska, polka, acid jazz, country, and western, and yes, even classical, because there's an amazing dedicated group of people, actually at least 3 of them, who are willing to bring their fancy instruments out into the worst place in the world, to have them destroyed by the elements, to make beautiful music as a gift to our community. I've heard some amazing music on Playa over the years. I'm thinking back to a few years ago when there was an impromptu opera slam in my camp. We had like an opera throwdown that ended in like a big round robin of Barber of Seville. And that was right on the heels of an a cappella didgeridoo band. There's like no shortage of musical variety. If you just maybe move away from that big thumping sound truck that's playing that thing that sounds like boots and cats and boots and cats. So we've put together 2, not just 1, but 2 amazing shows about classical music out on Playa. Classical in the sense that it's not made by drum machines, it's made by real humans who are willing to brave the elements and bring their music out there. We have actually 3 groups. There is a Playa Philharmonic, there is the Playa Pops, and the one we're going to start with tonight is the Playa Choir, which brings the amazing power of multiple human voices to life in really crazy, strange, beautiful ways, and also maybe a little bit of a sermon thrown at the end. So let's get going on that. I have to thank in advance my marvelous producer, kbot.
Could each of you say what your name is and what your role is?
Hi, I'm Tory. I am a longtime participant and kind of behind-the-scenes coordinator of the Playa Choir.
Thank you.
I am Leut. I am the resident preacher.
Okay, we have to go a little deeper on that, Leut, actually on 2 things. Is Leut short for lieutenant? And what's the preaching all about in Playa Choir?
Every year I deliver a secular sermon, usually riffing on one of the 10 principles and bringing in stuff from my life to illustrate those ideas. As for Leut, that comes from a couple of women I met in my first or second burn who said that we give Playa names to new burners, decided my name was Eleuthera, which happens out of nowhere to be the island out of 700 islands in the Bahamas that my mother's whole family is from. And to this day, I don't know how that happened because Playa magic, and I shortened it to Leut.
Thank you for that. We so often just like let Playa names fly over our heads and never ask for the story. And the story is so often magical. Thank you. All right. Hey, bud.
So I wanted to make this episode because I'm fascinated by the complexity and the magic that happens when these huge ensembles come together on Playa and make music. And I've been intrigued for years. One year Playa Choir was across the street from us, and I heard you rehearsing every day. And then I learned that you also rehearse off Playa, perhaps. Some of the ensembles do. I know the orchestras do. You probably do too. But I was just fascinated by the humans and the massive communal effort that it takes to bring these groups together on Playa. How did this come to be? What made you decide to create a Playa Choir?
Let's see. I'm a choir director by trade. I've been in choirs my whole life. And my first year kind of at Burning Man didn't really count. I was a weekend warrior. This was 1999. And then I came back in 2002 and I did nothing but party because that's what you do when you're young and foolish like that. And I'm like, I need to do something. Like, I can't just come out here and party. It's cool for a couple of days, but I need to do something. I've always loved gospel music. I have an upbringing in church, even though I'm not a practicing like Christian or anything like that. But I just like that feeling, that element. I'm like, man, this would be a great place to have a choir that does a Sunday morning thing. So the next year I started one, and it started in a really dank, stinky army tent called the Spirit Room. And I made this little altar and somebody painted a sign. And I think we had maybe 7 or 8 people in the ensemble, and like 8 people showed up. And I had an old Rhodes and somebody came and played percussion, and that's how it started. I just thought this place needed it, and I was so scared. What if this doesn't happen? It doesn't have fire, it doesn't have pyrotechnics, it's not electronic music. What if nobody likes this project? What if it fails? But I just kept doing it.
What year was that you finally built the choir on Playa?
It was 2003. Yeah.
2003. Thank you, Tory. It's a good thing we're a community, because if I was leading the whole thing, we would never get off the ground.
And Tory, what year did you join the choir?
I first saw the choir in 2009, and it was a life-changing experience. I'd been to Burning Man since 2007, and somebody came into my camp and said they were involved in this, and I stopped by one of the rehearsals. At this point, it was in the Jazz Cafe, so it had grown a little bit in those years. And I wept. I was so moved. And here was this group of people singing together. And, I'm getting emotional even now just thinking about it. But I broke down, and I was like, oh my God, I have to do this. I have to be part of this. 2011 was my first year in the choir, and I've been a part ever since. And it's literally my life has changed in those intervening years because of Madi. Madi is our inspiration and driving force. Leut is the voice of the Playa, but Madi is our inspiration.
How about you, Leut? How did you get involved?
Well, my first burn was 2011. I happened to see a sandwich sign somewhere in the city saying that there was this choir on Sunday morning, and was like, okay, I'll go check that out, whatever. I sat there, was kind of blown away, thinking, who is this woman leading this choir? And why does this choir sound like the black churches I grew up with in Harlem on the Playa? Something's going on here, and I should probably be part of it. So I joined the choir the next year, and it's now just part of the rhythm of my burn.
And what does it take to join the choir? How do you find choir members apart from on Playa? Are you still looking for people?
We welcome everybody all the time. I spent a lot of time at the Glide Church in San Francisco. I sang in their choir for quite a while. And one thing that really moved me about that place is just their severe commitment to welcoming everybody in that church. And this is in the Tenderloin, like the gnarliest, seediest, most drug-infested neighborhood. This church sits right in the center of it. And so, it really made a strong impression on me, the kind of welcoming attitude. So when I started the choir, I was like, this is how it has to be. Like, everybody's welcome to come sing with the choir. We have a solid core of about, 40 singers that return every year. And then it's the people that walk by that are like, wait, what? What is going on in there? And they will come by and they're like, oh my God, I sang in choir when I was in high school. I would love to do this. And they become like Mark. They become like Tory. They become like our people.
I'm curious about the musical direction. It sounds like you folks stick fairly closely to traditional gospel choir music. Is that true?
Actually, the music is really different this year. I need to step out of my comfort zone and do some different things. And so I don't think there's a traditional gospel tune in our set. But the lyrics are always, I think when I'm choosing the music, I have the theme in mind, but I'm going for what I think is really going to touch people, what I think is really going to inspire people. It always has to do with reminding people that they are works of art. That's always at my core. There's always a transformational piece, the kind that gets people crying. There's always a couple pieces that get people dancing. But the lyric is pretty much what always drives my music choices.
Okay, so I'm not going to hear anything snarky, like an a cappella version of Boots and Cats. Boots and Cats and Boots and Cats.
No.
Or I
No.
know a couple of guys who have an a cappella didgeridoo band on Playa. Have you heard Didgeridoo?
No.
I may connect that with you.
Oh, that would be so great. Have them come to our service. I always invite other artists to do things like solo. We always have things that augment the service. So have them come see me.
Fun.
It's interesting you asked about traditional gospel. When I tell people that we're non-denominational, the example I give is the year we sang a hymn to the Afro-Caribbean ocean goddess Yemaya.
Yeah.
I get it.
Can you hint at what you're singing this year?
The first tune is Awake My Soul by Mumford and Sons. I have this like deep-hearted connection with like Americana roots music. I was 7 miles from the closest stoplight when I was raised. I don't know what city life is like at all. So I never went to a big gospel church.
600 miles and a mighty load, a pilgrimage revival for every soul. I'm leaving with the daybreak, and I'm back when autumn dawns. I'm listening. The desert rises in your soul. Well, she's calling out, you better listen close. Well, come on, children, won't you come home?
We're ending with Van Morrison's Wild Nights, but I changed all the words to Your Wild Life. And Amalia, like wildness. I'm way into that saying by Henry David Thoreau, like, in wildness is the preservation of the world. It's so important. Our tearjerker transformational piece is this piece called Heavy by Bird Talker. And the theme is just leave what's heavy behind. It's Sunday. It's Sunday at Burning Man. And then I'm doing an original composition called Ona's Prayer. And Ona is my friend David Syrie, who came to our service in 2009. He is such a special human being. He came to the service. He hated Burning Man. He didn't want anything to do with it. He was so done. He just wanted to go home. And he might have maybe ingested something on Saturday night and wound up at my service on Sunday morning and was completely transformed. And we've been really sincere friends ever since. But his whole thing is he started to paint. He's 70 years old when I met him, and he started to paint. You're talking like business developer, traveled all over the world, owns businesses, companies, all this stuff. And he just said, I'm going to learn to paint. And he's amazing. He's a ridiculously incredible, childlike, wild painter. So it's a piece that's dedicated to him and kind of his philosophy of his life. I wrote this poem for him, and then I just set it to music. It's called Ona's Prayer.
Do you want to talk about the Finlandia?
Yeah. This is the first year we're collaborating with the Black Rock Philharmonic, which is super exciting. I'm so excited to do that. That is hush hush because I think the orchestra doesn't know that we're going to sing. It's a surprise for the orchestra. So Gene Sibelius wrote this beautiful sort of nationalistic piece, Finlandia. It has a choral part at the end. It's pretty a famous hymn.
explain why you call your performance or your experience that you share a service?
It's church for people who hate church. It's church for people who are recovering church folk. There's something about Sunday morning in this world and also on Playa. There's something that needed to happen on Sunday morning that was cohesive, special, looked back on the week, but especially looked forward. So it's modeled after kind of a traditional church service, but I am so careful that everybody who speaks and the music we do is non-denominational and non-dogmatic. If church was like this, I would go every Sunday, you know? And that's so important to me to keep it that way because I don't want anybody feeling excluded. And the minute you start putting dogma in there, people start to get really turned off, including myself.
And Leut, you give a sermon, is that correct?
A secular sermon. It is sermon form in that, you know, I grew up in a church as well, and I've seen a lot of great sermons and I've seen a lot of bad ones. I try not to give bad ones. So my topic is never religious, but it's delivered in a form that's digestible as a sermon. If you think about Sunday on Playa, if you think about starting your day with the Playa Choir and ending your day with the temple burn, it is a very spiritual day. After the huge party that is the man burn, you have this spiritual day, and then you're ready to head out.
You know, Larry Harvey like to say the Burning Man is exactly like a religion, except with no higher power. And
Yes.
And I'm wondering if any of you are familiar with the first church of the Jerk. The Jerk Church?
I am very familiar with the Jerks. I've done a little bit of singing with the Jerks, but not a lot. And I really loved it when they had their cathedral on Playa a few years ago.
I think it comes from the same place that you were talking about, that people who grew up with church and they love everything about church except the religion part, right? They love the church picnics and they love the choir and they love the service and the fellowship. I think I understand that through that lens.
Can you tell us again what time and where the service happens on Sunday?
Mm-hmm. We load up at about 4:30 in the morning and drive out to the temple. And we're right behind the temple, right between the temple and the sunrise. And we start it pretty much at sunrise. Then we roll back to our dome and reset things up. And we do our main service at 11 at our dome.
The sunrise service is very different than the dome service in terms of the energy that's there. The sunrise service, we get a lot of people that have been out all night that are coming from the temple. They're very raw. In general, people are at the end of their week. Many have come through a very life-changing, Burning Man is hard. It's arduous, and people deal with their own inner stuff and relationships and choices. And so we often have a lot of people that we encounter there who their emotions are really on the surface. That energy, people just crying and really caught up in the moment at the sunrise service. And Madi is a artist in that she always times it that at some point, at some perfect moment in a song, the sun rises right behind us. And
I got nothing to do with that.
Oh, no, but you always start it just exactly at that moment. So when we're at the height of our, most important moving song, the sunrise comes up right behind us. We see the light hitting all the people and their faces sort of illuminating. Then the 11 o'clock service is different. It's much more family oriented. People are planning on being there. There's more that goes on, but again, very high energy. That's where we get really the people up and dancing. And, we have people leaving on Exodus, driving right by us and waving goodbye. And there's a lot of people. Leut talked about staying for the temple burn, but there's a lot of people who leave right after that. Also, we're often broadcast on BMIR. And so we have people as part of their exodus. Their tradition is to listen to our service on their way out. And that's our big point, is to get all those feelings from Burning Man to go home with you in the default and to remember that experience.
Very well said.
How do you rehearse for this?
I teach full time, but right when I'm done teaching in June, I take a tiny break, like maybe a day, and then I'm like, all right, I gotta get to work. And then I spend a few weeks choosing, writing, and arranging, and then making sheet music, making the music, and then putting basically practice tracks online so that it's out hopefully by the middle of June or July, excuse me. So people can get familiar with it ahead of time. And then we rehearse Tuesday through Saturday. So sopranos will get together, altos get together, tenors and basses all get together separately. And then the band also, it's like 5 different mini rehearsals at about the same time.
Ish.
And then leading up to Playa, people rehearse on their own. They have the track and they rehearse at home.
It's a huge amount of work to make sure everything works together, to arrange it and or write it and get it ready for the choir.
How does it feel the first time everybody comes together on Playa to rehearse together?
First of all, there's a lot of us who've been singing together for a long time. So there's a whole lot of welcoming. Oh my God, you're back. It's so great to see you. Some of us camp together at Playa Choir Camp, but some of us see each other only at rehearsals in the service, and then we don't see each other for another year. So there's a lot of that. There's a lot of getting organized. I'm kind of the bass section lead. And so for the new people, there's a lot of telling them how this thing is going to go and what they need to pay attention to and get your nose out of the music because you need to watch Madi. And then I tell them that again. And then I tell them that again.
Squirrel! Art car!
Aerialist, I was just going to say.
And then we get down to work. And, there's a lot of distractions on the Playa. There are people wandering in to watch us. There's an art car booming music going by, and we'll just stop and dance along for a minute as it passes and then go back to it. And then as the week goes on, we start to get into the rhythm of it, and we start to feel like a cohesive unit.
There's been a big change in our community since the pandemic. It used to always be, just as Leut described, that we would see each other only just once a year. Maybe we would get some emails over the summer about the music, but we would come together on Playa and it would be this big reunion. But in 2020, when the world shut down, our choir started Zooming. We decided, okay, we're going to get together and we're going to share creativity. And we had speakers and music, and it very quickly transformed into just a meeting where a group of friends where we just get together every week and visit and talk and catch up. And we still do it to this day, every Sunday. And we put on 3 virtual performances during the pandemic. In 2020 and in 2021, we did a virtual Sunday service on what would have been Burn Sunday. And in 2020, we also did a solstice service in December because we just felt like people needed that inspiration and that connection. There's members of our group who we wouldn't have made it without that community.
Yeah, it's interesting how everyone talks about the pandemic pause as this isolating time, but there are so many stories about how it also brought people together in new ways. When without it, maybe that never would have happened. Mm-hmm. I love that.
I was going to ask Leut if he knows what his sermon is going to be about this year.
I do.
Are you going to
share it with us? Or
I'd like to say that Madi gives me the freedom and the trust to step up there sight unseen and deliver a sermon that's going to move people. It's something I really value. It's a place where I have found a voice that I wasn't completely sure I had. And so I really enjoy putting that together and surprising and delighting the choir and the gathered crowd with what I come up with. I try to keep it interesting.
He's a great orator. He always has a really talented way of spinning a story, and then all of a sudden it comes back and you're just like,
that is also just a classic American style of oratory, right? The Sunday sermon, the preacher's voice.
Is there anything any of you want to say or any stories about the choir that we haven't gotten to yet?
Stories? Oh, Lord. There are
Maddie,
so
you
many.
should talk about our elders.
We've lost a couple of our elders this year. They were the oldest women in the choir. We love them so much. We called them the Mojo. They were so lovely. They rode around in this little cart, a little golf cart, and they came every year. They were in their 80s, and I think by the time Mo was done, she was in her 90s.
She turned 91, I think, at our last
91.
burn.
And they were exceptional women. Mo was one of the first female physicians. She was a doctor. And Jo, she just had a snap to her. She was so smart and so saucy. Like, she was a whip. She was a preacher's wife who sang in the choir. Actually, they both knew each other from singing in church in Reno. And they came out every year. Their son and grandson would help them get their RV there and unload the cart. And Jo used to, somebody's got to do this now. Jo used to bring these cards. And when people would come in to sit and listen to rehearsal, Jo would greet them and say, if you're interested in singing with us, here's the music. But if you want to come back next year and you want to stay in touch with us, give us your email and we'll keep in touch with you. She had these little cards. And I'll share just a quick story about Mo. So we built a dome. It's a super gnarly, very dangerous task. We don't have any assist except for our camp infrastructure lead, Guthrie, created and designed and built these dome jacks that lift it up as we go. We're talking about a big, huge dome, like the Thunderdome kind of dome. Heavy, dangerous, intense. This was in our first year of building the dome. And so we're all there early and we got a dome team. They've spent all day. They've got the first 2 rungs done. Part of what we do is that once we get to that, we start putting the top on our canvas shade slats. And at one point, Tim, the Rev, he's on the team. He's sort of leading the team. He walks over to me, and this is probably 3 o'clock in the afternoon, the heat of the day. And I can see he is not happy. I see the steam coming out of his ears. I see his face just blazing red. And I can just feel his energy. And I'm like, oh God, what's happening? And he comes over to me and he's almost in tears. And he's like, we have to start over. And I'm like, what do you mean you have to start over? He's like, we have to tear it all down, start over. Almost 9 hours of work. He said, we put the bolts the wrong way. The bolts are heading out. And so there's absolutely no way that the canvas slats will survive 5 minutes. And we're all just like, okay, well, there's nothing you can do about it. May as well just get started taking it down. So anyway, Mo comes over to me later. She's shorter than me. She's 5'2", 90 years old. Sweetest, loveliest human. She comes over to me. She's like, Maddie, I was watching them do that. And I was wondering about those bolts. But I didn't say anything because what does a little old woman like me know? I'm like, you're a physician. Of course you know.
I remember those ladies when you guys were across the street from us. They would come up in their little golf cart and they were adorable. Oh my goodness.
The Mojo cart. Yeah, they passed away. Joe, the owner of the cart and the RV, passed away this winter. And Mo passed away about a year earlier. We didn't know until actually Joe passed. So, yeah, we've had a number of our members pass in the time that we've been together.
Can I leave you with a somewhat different story? So a couple of burns ago, after we were finished the sunrise service, this couple came up to me and said, hey, can you marry us? And I said, well, I'm not legally qualified to do that. They said, that's okay. We want to get married. We met on Playa this weekend. We want to get married. I'm like, all right, okay. I'll just pull a ceremony out of my ass. Sure, let's do this. And so I said some traditional things, and then he pulled out a ring. Don't know where he got a ring. He pulled out a ring and put it on her finger. And she pulled out a wristband from the orgy dome to put on him. Because apparently that's where they had met. And that's why I love the Playa.
That's beautiful. Love it, the orgy dome.
If I had known when I started this choir how beautiful the community would be and how beautiful this experience would be, I'm not sure I ever would have doubted it. There were definitely some growing years. We've had some growing pains. We've had infrastructure not happen. We've had all sorts of crazy things happen, but I am so proud of this community. I'm proud of this project. I am deeply humbled by this community. Deeply humbled. It's the longest ensemble I've worked with, and it's been so cool to watch it grow and change. Playa Magic has just carried us every single year. There's been such miracles that have happened through this choir. So yeah, I feel really spoiled fucking rotten and really blessed beyond measure to have this history.
Can I add something?
I'd like to add something too.
Go, Tory.
One of the things that's special about the choir is that it really does embrace radical inclusion. Anybody can come and participate. I think that is especially cited by the soloists. Every year there are a number of songs where there are opportunities for people to have a solo. Sometimes it's a big solo. Sometimes it's just a line or two here. Madi has the amazing talent of finding who needs that opportunity and picking that person, not necessarily who's the best singer or the greatest performer, but who's the person who's going to benefit and grow the most. You talked about growth and change from that opportunity to step out of their comfort zone and sing in front of an audience and try something on. We don't pick the soloists until Saturday, just the day before the performance. So all week long, everyone is practicing and learning. And then we do sort of tryouts on Saturday. Madi always tries to get everyone involved so that people have the opportunity. But I have seen her nurture and help people grow into those roles and then just blossom and shine. It's really inspiring to witness. It's a very special part of the choir.
Mm-hmm.
I'd just like to add, so I've been singing with the choir since 2012, and I've been speaking since 15, 16. There is not a year that has gone by that at the end, people haven't come up to me, some of them in tears, saying that this is the best part of their burn.
Mm-hmm.
Madi, there's something you used to say a lot, and I haven't heard you say it in a while. You would say at the end, I'm Madi, and this is my art project.
Mm-hmm.
We are psyched to be your canvas.
Mm-hmm. Thanks for doing it.
Well, I'm just going to thank you all for your time. It was a great conversation, and look forward to hearing some music out there.
Yeah, come and see us. Come and sing.
Yeah, come by.
Come join us.
I think you'll see you out there.
Thank you so much for this.